Hello and welcome to Mental Health. It's a Trap. We're your hosts, Susan and Stephen, mother and son, unraveling the complexities of the mental health traps people fall in. Join us on this podcast journey as we demystify the mental health labyrinth, explore common issues, and provide you with tools to navigate this sometimes extremely daunting terrain. You can expect engaging conversations, personal stories, and probably also have a laugh or two. Access to mental health care should not be what causes you additional stress. We invite you to follow along, and together we can embrace the darkness.
All right, welcome back. We have an awesome guest with us today. I met Elizabeth through Michael Whitehouse's JV Connect, and so that is a virtual networking event, which was awesome, so that we were able to connect with people who are like-minded in the same field or kind of have the same heart-centered approach and working with people. And so as we always do, we let our guests just kind of introduce themselves a little bit, and then we'll just have an open conversation so everyone can get to know you. So Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself, what you do, who you are.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Stephen and Susan. It is a delight to get to talk with you both and to be able to be here and share more about some stuff that people may not want to talk about. It gets pretty heavy, but it's really all the more important to talk about. And the work that I do is very much a direct result of my own personal life and the journey that I've been on. So I'm very grateful for the chance to share that, because I know if I had had more ability to hear about people like me, it might not have been as intense as it was. So what I am is a certified mindset and manifestation coach. And that basically means that I like to bring the science and the spirituality, because I'm also an intuitive empathic reader. And my most important job is that I'm a mom of 3. I homeschool, and my oldest is actually on the spectrum. My youngest is just 3, so he runs around and keeps things interesting, as if they weren't already. And my journey has been a product of a lot of different things. There was, in the beginning, I knew I wanted to be a mom, but I had fertility issues that I knew there was only so much I could do about. And the one thing I knew I could control was my nutrition and my fitness. And so I went on my first health and fitness journey, and I lost over 100 pounds and maintained that weight loss through 2 successful, beautiful babies. And one of them has decided to visit. So I was at the best shape of my life, and I was really enjoying what I had done. But the most amazing thing was not the weight loss. It was a sense of self-worth that I had never had in my life. As a survivor of child abuse, I grew up with negative self-esteem, and it was so amazing to feel good about myself for the first time, to be exploring this role as a mom and to find something I liked about myself independent of all of that, and to prove myself that I could do something amazing. And then, as so many of us, I failed to set boundaries with someone very close to me, and they sabotaged the mindset and the self-worth that I had been able to do the work on. And in that process, I ended up losing all of those healthy habits that I had formed, which as a result dominoed into every aspect of my life. I gained all the weight back and plus some, and I ended up in more than 6 years of severe clinical depression. And in that time, I dealt with a miscarriage and the loss of a grandmother who was like a parent to me. So it was a really, really dark time in my life. And the most frustrating thing is that I knew the tools that I could utilize to get myself out of it, but I just couldn't find the energy. I couldn't find the will to make it happen. And thankfully, I did not stay in that place. It was a lot longer because I couldn't utilize medication or therapy. They just weren't options for us for a variety of reasons. So because I was alone in that, it took me a lot longer to come out of that darkness. And I lost a lot of years with my kids that I'm not proud of. And I'm still healing and forgiving myself for that. But when I did come out of that place, it was primarily through mindset, through the perspective shifts, through really taking myself on that inner journey. And in that path, I found my way to our third baby, my intuition unlocked. I found my way into this work that I do to help other moms who are feeling lost. And it's been a really amazing, beautiful journey that I'm grateful for, even the rough patches, because it's taught me a lot.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your journey of what life has been for you and the obstacles that you've overcome, even without kind of the traditional mental health aspect of what most people go through, right? And being able to do that. And it's interesting, some of the things that you shared about, perspective shifts, changing your mindset, and things like that. So I think that will open up a lot of good conversation for this podcast, and how it kind of interrelates with the therapy modalities that clinicians use in the field. So thank you for sharing that, and welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's huge because there's a lot of people out there who, for whatever reason, can't afford therapy, can't afford medications, or maybe depending on like their culture or their family, like they don't believe in therapy, they don't believe in medication. So kind of from what I'm hearing is you being an example of how people can get through things without it needing to be what people think they need to do to get through their situations. And I wanted to ask a couple of things on if you can kind of define what it means to you, what spirituality means to you, and also what mindset, because I think everyone has a different take on it. And some people are like, oh no, spirituality. No. Oh, mindset. Like everyone says mindset.
Yeah, no, I love these questions. Thank you for asking, because there are these umbrella terms that have very different connotations for people. And, that is my first thing, is that I think it's a very personal take for each and every one of us. A lot of us will agree on maybe broad strokes, but it definitely comes down to what is it for you. So for me, spirituality is this very overarching term. It isn't religion. Religion is an organized kind of community. There are doctrines and things like that. Spirituality can incorporate religion, but religion can be separate from spirituality as well. So when I think about spirituality, I think about a system or simply a belief that gives you a sense that you are not alone. It connects you with something more universal, and it gives you that, just maybe that hope, right? That, it's not just you. You don't have to do this alone. There's something more. And it gives you, as a result of that, you often end up with maybe a moral code or a compass and things like that. But it can be expressed in a variety of ways. And as long as you have something that you can believe in, I think that's beautiful. And then when it comes to mindset, that is, I could talk about that for a long time, hence my choice in work that I do. But at this basic core, mindset is about the way that you view the world and yourself. It's a habit of thoughts and beliefs and the underlying or subconscious kind of drive from your thought patterns, from the things that you accept as truth and that shape the way that you view all of the things. So it's a product of your upbringing and your culturalization and your socialization and your life experiences, but it's also a product of what you choose to believe.
Yeah, I feel.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I feel like it. And my mom and I have kind of like, we go in and out of different things, and how a lot of like, if you go back and peel the layers back from therapy and how there are different practices. Like we talked a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy, what's kind of like what you said, what's in your control, what's outside of your control, and how it is like a mindset, right? It's like, but it is a bigger like mindset. You said is the umbrella term. And then there's everything else that's underneath it, you know, your family, your friends, your work, your thoughts, expectations, and how a lot of that can impact how we show up in the world, and how it's sometimes it's not necessarily thinking being positive or being negative, but kind of sifting through the dust to find like the core of who you are, your values and your morals, and how that can be the shift if you figure out who you are or who you want to be, to become that person versus the version of being yourself for someone else or because of their expectations.
Absolutely. And I love that concept of the positive versus the negative, because it's so arbitrary. And that's a huge aspect of mindset is, you know, how do you perceive this? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it inherently good or evil? Or is it simply that we've assigned it those things because of what we've been told, because of what we've experienced, and what we think should be right or wrong?
It's interesting. So I, you know, like Stephen talked about the CBT model, and when I use that in therapy with clients or patients, you know, it's really like looking at the belief systems, right? Even with someone who struggles with substance use disorder, like what are the belief systems around your use, right? So for alcohol, people say, well, it makes me relax. I feel calm from it. So they build this belief system around the benefits of consuming alcohol, to the point where it impacts their functioning and their relationships and all of that. And so, you know, really looking at how do we change the mindset, right? Because, and then people don't want change, right? If we're all kind of temper tantruming when it comes to change, and saying, well, I've tried this and I've tried that and nothing's working. And, you know, people just get stuck in these places. And so I think it's great to be able to look at a lot of different things in life, right? So therapy works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Life coaching works for some, it doesn't work for others. And I say to people, use whatever you need to use to get you where you need to be. And as long as it's not hurting you or anyone else, it doesn't matter. You know, as long as you can try to get to the place where you want to be. And so I think that it's you know, those pieces, even though they might be experiences, you know, I lost my daughter, Stephen lost his sister, and there was choices in that journey. The choice to stay stuck in the grief, or the choice to move forward and still live, have hope, laugh again, you know, all of those things. And they were choices over time. And so Absolutely. I think sometimes people feel like, no, there's nothing after loss, or there's, you know, I'm never going to feel happy again because I'm just depressed and I can't get out of this depression. And we can. There's examples of it all over the world, that people can overcome their, you know, their experiences, the negative experiences that they've had in their life, whatever. So I like to learn about new things and present those new things to others to say, hey, this isn't working. What do you think about this? You know, and give people options.
I love that. I love that, because it's so true that we're going to respond to different things, and we're going to respond to maybe different perspectives or different presentations of the same thing. That's why it's so neat now that we have so many podcasts and YouTube videos and things out there that are presenting maybe the same idea, but just from somebody else's way of talking about it. And suddenly you connect with something that never made sense before, just because of the way that somebody is able to present it to you. And it opens up so much. And I love that you were talking about getting stuck in those habits and getting stuck in those beliefs, because I had the most crazy beliefs around my depression when I had it. And it was so funny to me, because I knew it was logically, I knew it was wrong. And yet there was a part of me that felt it was true. I felt like I couldn't possibly be depressed if I thought I was depressed. I thought it was like this catch-22 thing. even though I have studied psychology for years and years and years, and I was on track to get a degree before health things come in the way, but I knew that was not true. Yet there was a part of me that felt like it was. And it was this mental trap I had laid for myself because I didn't want to do the things that would cause change because of that outdated operating system we all have inherent in us, that change is dangerous and bad, right? Change means we're going to face a saber-toothed tiger if we go outside the cave. We absolutely can't do that. We might starve inside the cave, but we're going to have to trust that this is the same and we know the cave is safe. And we let that be, copied and pasted onto so many things in our lives. It just is a blanket term. It's speaking in front of people on a stage, but it feels like you're going to face the mammoth. It's going to talk to a therapist and get the help you need, but it feels like you're about to walk through the fire. And it feels like my kids will absolutely never give me a moment to breathe. But the reality is this is just a season of my life. And everything that gives you a reason to stop, I have found, also gives you a reason to go forward, right? The grief and the loss can be the reason that you don't let yourself live anymore. It can also be the reason that you celebrate the life that you have and the one that isn't there, and the memories that you get to share for the one that's no longer a part of this. And it's not easy. Like, it's not flipping a switch. It's not going to happen overnight, but it really can come down to a choice.
Right. And I think there's a loss of hope, right? You mentioned the word hope, and I don't know, I'm a firm believer in the word hope, because if I weren't, I probably wouldn't be here today. And that hope is hard to see when you're stuck in a place, or if you're stuck in grief, or you're struggling in your life. It's really hard, and it's there, right? So both things are existing in the same space. So how do you tap into that space outside of the stuck space, And I think people are just fearful of what might be on the other side. Like you talked about the saber-toothed tiger, the mammoth. I think those are great analogies great visuals, because trust me, if I came up against one of those, I'd be running the other way. So we understand that, right? And when people hear it, and they can visualize it, I think sometimes that visualization can help people move in the direction that they would like to go.
And at the essence, that's a huge component, is knowing where you want to go and being willing to take steps towards it. And that is where hope can be like a double-edged sword, because when you're in the thick of that stuff, hope feels like it's just adding salt to the wound, right? Like there's a sense that it's just not something you can ever have again, and it's just taunting you with an impossibility. But the thing I found through my own journey is that you could actually fabricate hope in a way that feels really tangible. Like the first thing I did to come out of my depression, and this wasn't I'm going to do this and start to heal from depression step. That was not my thought process at the time. But as I look back on it, I know it was a really pivotal moment for me. And it was not something, deeply transformative and internal. It was actually an external thing. I had gotten to this place, as I said, in my depression journey where I gained all the way back and then some, and got into this morbid obesity that I was so mad at myself for. And I had done what I think a lot of us do when we have this emotionally linked weight fluctuations. And I told myself, you don't get to have any clothes, no new clothes until you're in a size that you deserve to have new clothes in. So you're just going to wear what you have. Doesn't matter that it's uncomfortable. Doesn't matter that you hate it and feel worse about yourself. That's just you. That's going to push you to get better. Right? That's going to push you back into the shape you deserve to be in. And I woke up one day, and it was going to be my birthday in the coming weeks. And I was like, I'm so sick of that. That's so stupid. I hate it. It just makes me feel worse. Why am I doing this to myself? Like, if I'm going to healthy lose the weight and get back into the shape that I know I can be in, it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm still going to need to put on clothes until I get to that place. And I don't want to spend my birthday feeling miserable about myself. So I found a dress that I loved the look of, that was designed for someone of my current body shape. And it really reflected who I wanted to be, the parts of myself I wanted to let out more of. And so I used my birthday as an excuse, and I bought the dress and I put it on, and suddenly it didn't feel like the weight was just a little less all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, I remember this feeling. This is what hope feels like when it's not a weapon.
It's very powerful, right? And you talk about like those, so people, sometimes I think the expectation or the thought process around change is astronomical for people. Like they think it's this really big, big thing. And it can just be small baby steps, right? Because if you've been stuck for that long, you can't snap your fingers and say, hey, I'm great today. I'm not going to be depressed anymore. It really doesn't work that way. It's more about what are those small things that I can do to build like slices of hope to get where I want to be. And I think and I do that a lot in my therapeutic work with people, is the small steps. I worked in community mental health, so a very, severe persistent mental illness with, that population, and change was hard, progress was hard, and I did see it work. And so it's more, I had this one client, and I've shared it on this podcast, who couldn't get out of bed. She just never got out of bed. She came in for appointments. So we did this like, okay, so I want you to get out of bed and then get back into bed. I'll see you in 2 weeks. There was more content to the session than that. So she did that for 2 weeks, and she came back in. And I said, okay, so now I want you to get out of bed, make the bed, and then go back to bed. And it was like those small steps. And, because when you're, physiologically in her body's depressed. Her mind and soul are depressed, right? So I can't say to her, you just need to get out of bed every day and do stuff. It had to be like really small steps. And, it was it allowed her to kind of slowly and gradually get to where she wasn't even taking naps during the day anymore. And it was a process. And I think people want quick fixes. Right, Stephen? Like, where's the magic wand? And I say to clients, listen, if I had a magic wand, I'd use it on me first, then I would share it with others.
It's so powerful and so true. We have all of these messages that are just hammered into us from all areas. Like you have to, you just have to go for it. You have to go big or go home. Like you gotta grind to win, and you gotta no pain, no gain. I hate that one. It's just there's constant, bombardment from all of these sources that tell you have to just muscle through it. And it's not like we don't know what we need to be doing, right? That's part of what we beat ourselves up with. We know what we should be doing to heal from depression, to heal from grief, to make the changes and become the person we want to be. But we also have a lot of baggage that we're carrying, and there's a lot of ingrained habits and thoughts that are giving you a lot of good reasons to not do it and sound very valid at the time. But if you can chunk it down into just stand up for 2 minutes. Okay, you survived. Congratulations. That was step one, right? And you chunk it down to something that your brain's like, okay, I can do this. It's not going to make any difference, but I can do this, right? And then you have to let yourself trust the process. And it's so much easier when you have people who can guide you in that, even if it's not a professional, even if it's just a support system that is community or family that's helping you along the way, who can celebrate when you have the wins, who can let you know that, losses are not forever. And my favorite thing that I ever heard from someone was that consistency can also be consistently not giving up.
I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think another thing too that I am frustrated with when people like fake it till you make it. And it's like, I understand if you're new that you need to practice to get better. But if that's the mindset, how do you ever get to that point where you push through the I'm not good enough, right? Like it's pretend to be some, well, I mean, I guess that is a way some people do it. The book I read, I don't know if it was Alter Ego, but it had something to do with pretending to be someone that you admire, whether it's a superhero, a character on TV. If you wanted to be like, if you knew a life coach or a therapist, you wanted to be like them and act like them, that you could have that persona, and then in your head you would think, how would Batman do this? How would Superman do this? How would so-and-so do this? So as we talk about mindset, I think that could be a shift too, is sometimes I would see that as trying something different versus faking it, right? Like, I'm going to fake being Superman so that I could be this strong person and like not take no for an answer. And to kind of tie in the perfectness, there was someone that I met that said, if you practiced, when we say practice is perfect, makes perfect, well, when you practice imperfectly, you make that imperfect. But when you practice like the correct habits, then you can gain those skills and you can grow, because you could do something wrong 100% of the time, even though it's not going to take you down. But what would it look like if you did it correctly?
I love that. And it's really powerful, like you're saying, to take on the mindset and the activities and the perspective of someone that you admire. And it's a great starting point. And the thing that I love to work with my clients on is this manifestation practice of, can you start to think and act from the perspective of the person that you want to be growing into? So then it shuts off that brain's like, well, I'm never going to be Superman, right? Like, I'm not from Krypton. I can have all sorts of excuses to not do this. Versus, okay, yeah, no, I could be in 5 years, I could be someone who makes really healthy food choices, or I could be someone who has healed enough from this grief to not cry every 5 minutes. That feels more achievable, more attainable. And it feels like there's, again, the hope comes into it a little bit more, because now you're not following someone else's path. Even if someone else's path is influencing yours, you're growing into the person that you want to be. And I talk to a lot of people who are, especially moms in the thick of momming, can feel very lost to the role, to the day in and day out. And, there's a lot of ways that we can lose ourselves to these experiences. But what becomes really powerful is, okay, but now you know what you don't want. So if that's where you're starting from, that's powerful too. How can you start to filter out more of what you don't want? How can you start to limit its impact on you? How can you shift something internally or externally? Environmental changes are huge. They can have a massive impact on our inner world. And I think they're often underutilized. Like, what is shifting my couch going to do? Well, you might be surprised. It gives your brain this tripwire that, oh, something's different. And if this is different, what else could be different?
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. I worked with a patient when you were saying the couch thing. Sat in a chair in her living room for a year. Struggled with depression, and so came in just kind of in that stuck space. And I said to her, "Listen, find another chair in the living room." That's all I said to her. Find another chair in the living room. So she started sitting in a different chair. It felt uncomfortable. It was different. It was new. She started doing things just because that chair felt uncomfortable. And she never went back to the original chair, which was good. That was the goal, get you out of that chair. Get that brain, you know what I mean? Because I think even those small, whether it's perspective shift, if it's something you do physically, or, sitting with another person, if you're not generally used to doing that for 5 minutes or whatever it is, just those small little steps and accomplishments can really bring someone to a whole different mindset.
I love that. That's so powerful. And I think people really need to roll that back and listen to that again, because it's huge. It's actually one of the elements I work with my clients on is if what you're doing is going to take longer than 5 minutes, if your goal step or your shift or your healthy practice is going to take longer than 5 minutes, then you need to cut it down even more. Because if you get it into these 5-minute increments, there's a 5-minute rule that's been proven over and over again. Your brain is like, okay, I can do 5 minutes. Right? I can eat broccoli for 5 minutes. I can go for a walk for 5 minutes. I can take a shower and, do something different for 5 minutes. And it shuts off, it gives you that fail safe where your brain's like, no, okay, I don't have to come up with excuses. We're only going to do it for 5 minutes. I can do that. And the more you do 5 minutes, right? It's 5 minutes here, it's 5 minutes there. And incrementally, like you were talking about, little shifts start to add up to big results.
Exactly. I think because, and we did a lot of that in community mental health, where we had to worked with the clients to have a goal, and then we had to have objectives to meet that goal, and they had to be measurable objectives. And I'm like, okay, I don't really care about the bureaucracy of documentation in regards to defining clients to notes and all of that. So my thing is I want to see people improve in their lives, to function in the best way that they can with whatever diagnosis they had. I've seen people be successful with schizophrenia diagnoses. One person never even on meds for it, but had to live a very structured life 7 days a week to manage the symptoms of that. To me, that's progress, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's really defining expectations, like achievable and reasonable expectations, because I think more times than not, we set people up for failure. Like we were talking about these, it's all or nothing, right? No. Sometimes that all or nothing makes probably 99% of the population want to run the other way. So how do we work towards making, if you keep trying and you fail all the time and there's not even these little blips of hope, why would people keep trying?
Exactly. And it's so huge, because what you were talking about that I want to make sure everybody hears is that it's these achievable, manageable things that meet you where you are. It meets you where you're at. It's not about, I want to learn to swim, so I'm going to jump into the ocean and figure it out as I go.
Right.
Okay, that's going to work for some people, but it's also going to be considered population control. Let's be realistic about this. Maybe you start out with the 3 feet with the kitty wings on. It's okay. It is okay to not know how to do something on your own. It's okay to not be able to jump right into the extreme. And there's so much now that I'm so glad we're combating that mentality of you have to go all or nothing. You have to just dive in and no excuses and get it done and all of that messaging, because the worlds that we're discovering now, things that are opening up with things like epigenetics, where you can literally use the things that you think and the way that you approach the world to heal conditions we are still trying to understand. It just blows my mind as to what's possible. None of it works, and none of it matters if you're trying to take yourself from point A to point 3,756, right? There's other points along the path for a reason. You're allowed to take your time and walk your own path.
Yeah, I do a lot of the journey talk, right? People have a goal, and so sometimes we focus so much just on the goal that we don't enjoy the journey. And the journey can be good, bad, and ugly. And it's okay, right? Because we're going to fall, we get back up, we try again. And that's what life is, right? It's not getting stuck in the mindset of, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'll never accomplish anything. And it's very easy for us to get stuck in those places because of all of the messaging that we are exposed to in our environments, in our culture.
Absolutely. And the small steps that we're talking about is the way that I work with people on getting out of those mental loops of, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not smart enough, I don't have time, just all of the things, right? I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And the small steps make a difference there too, because there's also this whole, don't think you're not dumb, you're a genius. Okay, nobody's going to go from I'm so dumb to I'm a genius and actually buy it, right? Like, no. That creates a cascading failure in the processing system. Nobody works that way. But you go from I'm so stupid, I can't do this, to I know how to figure some things out and I know how to find the information, right? Because that starts to open the door. There's truth to that. You've proven that to yourself. You can accept that. Okay, so if I know how to figure things out and I know how to look for the information, I now have this information. I'm now getting good at this. I can learn more. I can do better each time. And then suddenly you're like, holy cats, pretty damn good at this. Yeah, feel good.
I think that's a big thing, like the language, right? I think if we talk, not just if we talk better to ourselves, but if people talk better to us too, although we can't always control that, but those influences we have, because I think sometimes the versions of who we are the versions of someone else, and we're trying to be that person for them and not who we are and who we want to be. And so it kind of gets in the muck between confidence and even self-esteem, because I just did I was in a master class where the person broke it down and how, although people can use them like one word for each other back and forth, whether it's self-esteem and confidence being the same thing. However, the definition was confidence is the ability that you have kind of in a skill. So if you're a mindset coach, like you could be the best mindset coach and you do awesome work with clients, but the self-esteem could be, I'm not good enough. So you could have low self-esteem, but high confidence because of your ability and a skill, but then the belief in your mindset. So when we kind of reframe our language, it can help with that shift, right? And it could lead us to hope versus like you said, like it doesn't have to be this 0 to 100. It's like, what are the steps that I need to take to get there? And how can I reframe it instead of it being like a failure towards I tried, it didn't work out. What can I learn from this? And which way do I want to go? Failure doesn't always mean backward. It means, oh, it didn't work. So do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? Do I want to go forward? Do I want to turn around?
Love that. And I really try hard to get this message out there that I want people to forgive themselves for the fact that this is not easy, because you have spent a lifetime developing these thought patterns and these habits of perspective. It is not going to change overnight. And there's a lot of fear that comes in when you shift from these really limiting perspectives to these more empowered states of mind. Because the reality is, and this blew my mind the first time someone brought this up to me in a coaching program, we connect as human beings most easily through our misery, right? That misery loves company. Like people on a instinctual level feel like if I get really positive, I'm not going to have any way of connecting with people, right? Like when you're at work and you're gathered around the water cooler, everybody's complaining. Or, when you're in transit, everybody's just griping about what's going on. You get on social media, we won't even bring up how that's reacting currently with global events, but everybody is connecting through the negativity or through the complaint or through the pain aspect. And that can become very addictive because that is connection, and human beings have an innate need for connection. So there's this inner fear that we don't even articulate to ourselves that if we get out of that place and we get into a place where we're positive and happy and, really feeling our worth, we're not going to have anybody to talk to. Like, we're going to be so isolated, and it's scary.
That's interesting. I had a thought. It jumped out of my head. So I'm going to go dig for it. It's like, ooh. It does happen. I own it.
Yep.
You have to have something on the podcast, too. We have some good laughs.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're not sharing these messages because any one of us is perfect, or we're telling you this is, an example of how to live your life to its fullest. We're all people experiencing things. We're all going through the journey. And one of the things I loved that both you, Susan, and Stephen brought up is the part that, it's not about the end destination. It's about the journey. It's about the steps you take along a path. And it's not about your failures being failures. Because there are a lot of times where we thought we were headed in one direction. We thought we were headed for something. And as we were on that path, we realized that wasn't actually what I wanted in the first place at all. Like that, I don't know what I was thinking. That is not for me. I don't even want that. And it's only through the journey that you realize that. It's only through the perceived failures that you come to learn more about yourself. The losses and the hardships are tools that help us understand ourselves more, that help us appreciate the things that we have. And I really wish it wasn't that way, but there's truth to it. And the more that we accept that, the easier it is to not stay in those places of loss and hardship and darkness. Not that it's easy to get out of it, but it's easier to find the other side.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of truth to that, and I sometimes just in doing the work that I do is like how powerful emotions are, right, and feelings, and we have the ability to make choices in our lives to, like, I think, they say time heals all wounds. I'm not a fan of that saying. I don't know that time heals the wounds. I think time allows us to figure out how we're going to live our life with the wounds. I think it's more of that. I don't think wounds go away. I think we just figure out how to kind of balance those experiences that we've had in our lives. We can't change that they happened. Those things have happened. So how do we live our life with those as part of our history, though they don't have to be part of our present? Right?
So powerful and so beautiful.
And how to be able to kind of say, that's not who I am. And yes, these bad things have happened to me. And, I've had a lot of trauma in my own life. And, I've had to do the work in all different ways. It was in therapy. It was like, having great people in my life, even as a teenager and an adolescent, who cared about me and helped me, even though they didn't know what was going on or what happened, just being around. And I think it was that positive, that's what I wanted to get to when you were saying positive and negative. I knew it would come back to me. Is I noticed and observed that when we're feeling down and we're stuck in a stuck place, we tend to gravitate towards that, because that's the unhealthy, comfortable place. And if we, for people who struggle with substance use, they gravitate towards others who struggle with substance use, because it's it's like kind of like its own little culture. People who struggle with depression, it's its own little culture of, like, why would I want to be with someone positive when I feel crappy? I don't want to do that. I don't want them to make me feel happy. I feel crappy, right? So even just getting those feelings to kind of connect with the mindset, right, and the perspective shift, because I'm a true believer that we have to cleanse the inside. We got to cleanse that inside in order to be able to, because our thoughts and feelings, behaviors, they're all connected. And so how do we navigate all of those parts so that we have the ability to say, someone was kind of short with me at work, And it reminded me of maybe some bad experiences in the past of people being short with me, or, verbal, emotional abuse, whatever. And how do we separate that? That's not what's happening right now in the moment, right? Though we get caught in those cycles of going back to what we know. Yeah, it happened. We don't have to keep it here. Oh, so someone was short with me, I would say, is everything okay? Are you having a rough day? Depends who the person is. I might say, that was a little rude. Do you want to talk about something? Just because it allows for not things to fester and, grow into resentment.
I love that. And what I love so much that you brought up about that is the question aspect. Like, if you can get curious about it, you can lessen the impact of the emotional blow. Right? It's not gonna stop you from getting triggered. It's not gonna stop you from having an emotional experience, but it helps you not go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And the more curious, the more questions you can ask of external factors and internal factors especially, the more you can find your way to the things that you want to be experiencing, like understanding why you're having these habits of behavior, why you're gravitating towards these specific emotional frequencies. And the more you understand about that, the more you empower yourself to then start to make the changes, to find the support you need, to make the shifts that you need to determine the path that you want to be traveling versus the one you feel stuck on. And people just need to remember that you have the ultimate power to ask those questions. It's in you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something that we've talked about, is like also a part when do you, as the person, when do I make the choice to understand myself, my thoughts, my feelings, my body? Because if you're always reacting to people or the environment, saying it nicely, maybe it's a you problem. And I've, my relationship with my mom has gotten a lot better. And I feel, because in terms of like going to social work school, graduating, and then just having like that to connect with, and also being more aware of how I can get reactive, and I still do. Like, I'm human, and I'm sorry, Mom. But it's true though. If you're not willing to say like, what is causing me to react this way? It's okay if you're tired. It's okay if you're angry. It's okay if you're frustrated. But like, what is it in you? And can you and the more you can it's kind of like the habits of like, it doesn't have to go away altogether, but if you slowly look at it and understand it better, then it tends to resolve, or you better understand who you are so that you can give more, or you can grow, or you can be different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Use a tough cookie sometimes. Not that I'm a perfect parent, because I am far from that. And, it got to a point in my own life for me, in my journey, of saying to him, you know what, Stephen, I've made mistakes along the way. I will always make mistakes. They're going to happen. I'll own it. And I can't change what's happened in the past. So it's up to you to figure out what you want to do with that stuff, because I'm not going to be held to those things. All I can do is apologize. That's all I can do. I can't change them, and I can't fix the fact that I've made mistakes along the way, though I have the ability to make better choices moving forward, right? And so you have to own your behaviors and your reactions, and it's not okay to treat me that way. I probably didn't say it in those nice words, trust me. I probably blew a head gasket a few times over the years.
Right. When the emotions are high, like, we can talk about it very rationally and, articulately where we're sitting right here. But when the emotions are high, we're absolutely devolving into yelling and you just don't understand and things like that. Like, I accept that I am screwing my kids up in unique ways, and my role is just not to screw them up the same way my parents screwed me up, which is not the same way their parents screwed them up. And, we just we have this system that I think we're at a unique place where we're understanding it more now, that for the longest time, we have been conditioned into seeking external permission and seeking external understanding, right? Like when you're growing up, for survival's sake, your parents are, telling you everything and they're the source of all knowledge. And it's terrifying when you realize they're actually just people who are figuring stuff out as they're going. It's very humbling as a parent to be like, oh my God, I didn't know, but I didn't know until I got in this place. But all right, we're gonna go. We're gonna do this. But then it's your teachers, and then it's your community leaders, and then it's your employers. There is this entire life that is built around you have to ask permission, even go to the bathroom. You have to have other people tell you what the world is and how it works, and that gets you to a place where you have to remind yourself that it's okay to ask myself, what do I think about this? Okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And what do I think about that? Do I want it to be this way? Do I want to change it? How do I want it to be? And it almost feels like an act of rebellion to ask those questions, but they're so powerful.
They are powerful, and everyone has the right to question anything. And raising my kids, the one thing I did tell them was that they had the right to challenge any authority, as long as they were respectful in how they did it. And if they weren't respectful, then they had to deal with me when they got home. Because growing up, it was those messages, right? Children are seen and not heard. You can't question. Adults are always right. So we get all of these ingrained messages. And even as a young child, I was like, no, I think you're wrong. I do think you're wrong. And I went to Catholic schools all the way through high school. So you got the whole Catholic culture, you don't challenge the nuns and the priests and all of these things. And I'm just a firm believer that being an adult, I am wrong at times. And I have to own that I'm wrong. And if I want to have a relationship with children and minors, I have to be respectful too, right? It's a two-way street. So if you do something wrong, own it, take accountability, and what do you want to do moving forward about changing it? That's a question I think we can all ask ourselves. And I think the one biggest thing as I was listening to you, this word kept like screaming in my brain. I remembered the word too, imagine that, was the word pause. I use that with every single person I work with. And I go, pause. And I say the word pause and my whole body just goes, phew. I don't know if people feel that. I'm very empathic too. It just feels stuff. And I go, man, if we just all paused once in a while, we'd have less reactions. People would, it just gives us the ability to just identify what we're feeling in our body, what we're thinking, and giving us the ability to say, how do I want to respond? So I do this whole respond versus react model with people too, because I tend to believe that we're more reactive in life than we are pausing. And I feel like we're getting more towards the reactive. Obviously, if you watch what's going on in the world all over everywhere, it's just all these strong reactions to a lot of different things that are happening. And just pause, people. Just pause.
I love that. And that is one of the things that I think is so incredibly powerful about the work you do, Stephen, is because when you're in that space of breathing, you cannot help but pause. And it forces us to take that moment where we really have to okay, my system needs this breath. And as I'm taking it, my mind can slow down a little bit, and I'm not going to jump straight into reaction. I'm not going to lead with this emotional, knee jerk. I'm going to breathe, and that lets everything start to regulate a little bit, and it slows me down. And it's rare in the lifestyle we've created for ourselves, where we've convenienced ourselves into this hyper on all the time, hyper connected, and we're just pushing ourselves to this incredibly stressed out, anxious regulation, dysregulation, system wise, internally, let alone our thoughts and emotions. And then we wonder why we're so messed up. But when you have people like you who are okay, pause. or let's breathe, then it gets us back to that place where it's like, oh, it's okay for me to take a minute or even a few minutes before I react to this, before I respond, before I do anything. So I understand where I'm at, what's going on with me, and then I can reconnect with the world around me when I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they wonder why children react. It's because that's what they know. They live what they know. And, even as parents, pausing can be really hard because, you work all day, you come home, you get screaming kids, you got to do homework and dishes, or if you're homeschooling, and like everyone's journeys are different, and it's stressful. And when I started working in this field, so I was a career changer from finance to social work, and so I have a younger daughter, my youngest, and she was an adolescent when I went back to school. And I said to her, I need 20 minutes when I get in the house. Don't talk to me. Don't come at me. Don't ask me 50 million questions. I don't want to hear about homework. I need 20 minutes. I just need to come in the house, just unload, put my bags away, put my lunchbox away, just let me sit for 20 minutes. And that boundary was helpful because I was less reactive. And if she didn't give me that time, I would be like, hey, what was our rule here? Because you need to be able to pause and to just breathe and to just sit. And I just don't think we do enough of that because we're so caught up in the rat race of life, or we're so trying to run from the hard things in our lives.
Yeah, I love the self-awareness of you telling her, like, this is what I need. And having that be not only okay, but like a model for her. Like, this is what I need to be healthy and to have the best relationship with you. And it's okay to say that as a parent. This is why I love working with moms, because the reality is that our kids very rarely listen to what we say to them, right? Like, it's ingrained. That is just a part of the process. But what they do listen to, what they internalize in a powerful way, is what we show them. So if we show them that it's grind, and be hard on yourself and never achieve what you set out to, and the world is full of all of these things that are going to stop you, then is it any wonder that they grow up to model that, right? If you're telling them you can be the next president of the United States, you can be the next astronaut, Nobel Prize winner, and then you look in the mirror and say, oh my God, you're so stupid. You can't do anything. You're so worthless. They are not going to listen to the things, no matter how much you believe it for them, that you say to them. They're going to take on that, I'm so stupid. If my mom or my dad or this person that is my whole world for a really long time and shapes and defines what I know of the world around me is saying, I'm so dumb, I can't do this, then that's what they take on. And then it's a terrifying responsibility, but it's also the most empowered reason to do these things for yourself, to know what you need to be your best self so you can be the best parent for them. And it's not selfish to set those boundaries. It sets it up so that there's less fighting, so that there's less reactivity, like you were saying, so that you can be your best self for her in 20 minutes. And then you can really listen. And then she knows, oh, it's okay for me to tell someone I love that I need a minute, right? Like, I need 20 minutes to be myself before we talk. I need to go and process before we come out of this misunderstanding, disagreement, whatever it is, right? It's so much about empowering them through the example that you set. And that's everything to me. That's my whole passion and purpose and mission in this, is to work with moms so that they set that, so that the next generation maybe has just a few less of the issues that we have.
That would be wonderful.
Well, I think that would be a great place for us to kind of roll off. And if you want to say it again, just let people know who you work with, if they want to find you, and how they can contact you.
Well, this conversation has been truly wonderful. I appreciate both you and Susan and Stephen for your time and sharing this space with me and getting these messages out to people who really need to hear them. And if anything I've said has resonated and you feel like you're ready to make some shifts and you'd like to have a conversation around how to get into a mindset that's more empowered, how to model a limitless lifestyle for your kids while living it for yourself, and find your power to manifest a life that truly can be your dreams come true in very practical ways with the mess that you're living every day, then I'd love to talk to you. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is @thesurrealdawn. And my website is surrealdawn.com. And we can get connected, talk to you about all the things I'm always doing. Always got workshops or challenges or things going on that you can take part in that are absolutely free, just to give you an idea of what it could be like on the other side. And I'd love to just sit and chat about what's going on for you.
Cool. Well, again, thank you for being here with us. And then for anyone who is listening, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let us know. We can pass them along to Elizabeth, and we will most likely have her back on because what she does is amazing. And this was just a tidbit of who she is. And we'll probably get into more of what she does, how she does what she does. And so thank you again, Elizabeth. And for everyone else listening, take care.